Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to our speedrun walkthrough for Ultimate Alliance 3. Today, we are actually going to do something a little bit different than what we've done in the last couple of weeks, and that simply has to do with the fact that the chapter that we're looking at here with Attilan is incredibly short. So we're going to, of course, discuss Attilan and what that has to do, what it brings to the table, what you need to look out for. And then we will also go through the Wakanda section of the speedrun as well, because that gets a lot more in-depth and there's more things to go into and will ultimately prove to be more reliable than doing one this week and one next week, given how short Attilan is. Speaking of, to start off here, you'll need to jump all the way up to Medusa, talk with her, skip her dialogue, and then there is a skippable cutscene immediately after that. From here, you have some alpha primitives that you'll need to take out in order to progress into the next phases of this fight. Or not this fight, but this world. And it's fairly straightforward, all things considered. Now, these alpha primitives, they are pretty easy targets, all things considered. And then what you're going to want to do is you do have a little bit of a lull there between. So I would recommend switching over to Nightcrawler just to be a little bit quicker. It doesn't make the biggest difference because all you need to do is get up here to Thane, talk with him, and skip his dialogue. Then there's another cutscene here that you can skip through, which brings you into a fight with more alpha primitives. So it doesn't make the biggest difference if you use Nightcrawler at that section. It can shave off a fraction of a second, but if you forget or you're just not able to, it's not the end of the world. Now here, we just need to make our way through the alpha primitives that are in this room. Again, if you're in a New Game Plus type run, you can set up a soul siphon towards the center of this room. That'll do fairly well. But from there, you'll need to switch off again through a skippable cutscene, and then this is all optional combat. So you can just blitz right past this with Nightcrawler, make your way all the way up here to the throne room where you can engage in some more combat with Maximus. Now, there's a couple of things that you need to watch out for with Maximus, but most of them are in some of the later phases of his fight. This first phase doesn't have anything super crazy. You'll just need to wear through him about as quickly as you can. And then you will be teleported back to the other side of the throne room where you will want to basically do the exact same thing you did in phase 1. And phase 3 is where you really kind of need to watch out for things. You get teleported to the other side of the throne room again. And here he can set up an attack where he will cause large lasers to sweep across the battlefield. And what you're intended to do is come find Thane so you can stand in the center of the room and be protected by his amber bubble. But if you rush down on top of Maximus quickly enough, you can break his little protective shield and stagger bar in order to make sure that you can basically negate the lengthy attack animation that he has when attacking into you with his sweeping laser cannons. After that, you'll need to make your way down to Thane, skip through his dialogue. You'll have some unskippable dialogue that crops in here, and then one of the points that I feel is lazier, because you have that audio coming through with Winter Soldier, you then have the exact same dialogue coming through here in the start of this cutscene. But you can skip through the cutscene because you don't need to sit through and listen to the duration of it. So you may not even get to hear that apart from your initial playthroughs in that type of a setting. You'll need to sit through this loading screen, which that's one of the negative points of the speedrun in general, is these loading screens can take a fair minute. And occasionally, if you're going too quick, they can get frozen on them. So you've just kind of got to keep an eye on that while you're running there. But from here, you'll want to make sure that you have Nightcrawler at the front of your party, and you can skip past some of these earlier rounds of combat because they're optional until you get into the large clearing that's up through this little gateway here. Now, this is fairly straightforward in terms of the attacks that you'll need to throw out and the enemies that you'll need to take down. But as you can see there, if you take the time to set up a Soul Siphon, you can quickly get through those opponents. You can then skip through a cutscene with them and then draw those opponents back into the center of an arena yet again to get the majority of them. If you are using the Soul Siphon ability here, then you will need to keep in mind that there are a few opponents that cannot be drawn into that, and most of them are up here on this ledge, because just the way that the natural hazards work, the Soul Siphon cannot draw them down over that ledge, even though it's a relatively small drop-off. So make your way through that set of combat and you'll be fine. Then switch back over to Nightcrawler so you can make your way through the next little section of this overworld adventure. And it is going to be a very short journey into this area here. And then what you'll need to do from this point is make your way across the battlefield. This is actually an optional combat section, but it requires a little bit of some more technical movement in order to do so. Here, the Legendary Tail ability, which you typically use with Nightcrawler, will automatically hone in on other opponents. So you may want to try and use other attacks, but you need to break through that as quickly as you can so you can get into this area. Now, if you are playing in the new game category, you'll want to jump up here and break this crate because there is a really good piece of purple ISO in that zone that you'll want to make sure that you have. From here, you make your way into another little section, and it ideally wants you to take out those turrets, but there are certain vantage points where you're just kind of immune to what those turrets are. I like coming up here because it allows me to grab a couple of missiles, which can be used to get rid of some of those turrets, but what I'm more particularly aiming for is these little terminals here, which are powering the electric gate going into that next section. And if you play your cards right and have good aim, you can actually get rid of all of those gates with that first upper platform that we had, or that we saw with the opponents there. Now, sometimes when you're going so fast, you'll experience that type of a visual glitch, so you'll have to relay up to the mini-map that's in the top right-hand corner of the screen. So just kind of be aware that that is a possibility of something to happen. But like I was saying a minute ago, if you are trying to or aiming those missiles correctly, you can hit the two terminals that are powering that gate and move past it relatively quickly. The quickest I've ever been able to do that is with 3 different missiles, because the missiles do tend to prioritize those turrets as that's what they're intended to destroy, but they're very powerful natural hazard clearing tools that are deployed by the stage. So if you can get them to hit into those terminals that power the fence, then it's going to get you through a lot quicker than just beating into it with your attacks or abilities from any of your characters. There's a lot of these loading screens in Wakanda, if you haven't already figured that out. But we're just about through this one where we can move into the lower jungle portion of Wakanda. As soon as that loading screen ends, there is a cutscene that you can skip over. And then you'll just want to make your way down this pathway with Nightcrawler again, because there's a couple of zones that are optional combat, such as this first one. And then when you make your way down past this ledge, this is where you get into the mandatory combat and a cutscene that is going to take care of that for you. Now, if you're in a new game run, these snipers can be particularly problematic because they can shave off over half of your teammates' health, which is not what you want to see. But with Nightcrawler, I like having him up here initially to kind of drop down and attack into these different snipers. And then generally what I'll do if Nightcrawler's retained a fair amount of his health is I will come all the way down here to this side of the battlefield, take out all of the snipers, and then switch over to Thanos Infinite so we can finish them off. Again, that's in a new game run, or a new game plus run rather than a new game run. but it does indeed work. And you may have to backtrack a little bit down here in order to get to the rest of these aim grunts here. But it's just kind of a method of sweeping through as efficiently as possible if you're able to. We'll then make our way down here and finish off this last grunt, which is going to trigger a blackout transition as this gate comes down. And then you can make your way up this path. Now, again, I like using Nightcrawler here because you can get around to this turret that's living right here on this zone. And then you're going to want to quickly make your way over to these aim snipers that are here. And there is one more that's on the far end of this battlefield that you'll want to take down as quickly as you can. Now, the Soul Siphon works really well here for the New Game Plus runs of drawing all of these opponents into one central location. You will have a few additional opponents that jump in over this barrier once you get down to the last 3 that are required. And that should take care of all of those opponents. And we'll now switch back over to Nightcrawler. And that's because he gets down to the other end of this pathway very well. And it's just because of the different attack laser patterns that happen here is what he really helps out with. Now, you are going to be sent over to the left-hand side, and if you've played through the general story quest, you're already aware of that. You'll want to get ahead of that rolling attack there, and then the only thing that you're looking to do is get rid of these little transponders down here at the end of the pathway. And once you're down at the end, the rest of your party will be far enough behind you to the point where you can hit any other member of your team and they will be teleported to you. So you can bring in a heavier hitter, the Nightcrawler, in order to take out those transponders, which frees up the Panther, which plays this unskippable cutscene, which you can then use to transition down into the claw fight. Now, sometimes I have team members that get caught up in the rubble that's immediately behind or where everything kind of collapses there, so you have to be aware of that. You can skip through this cutscene and then make your way through the claw fight. I don't really like this fight in the new game run because it can be fairly tedious with a lot of the attacks, specifically in the second phase of Claw's fight here, where he teleports in, he sends a lot of shockwave attacks ricocheting across the battlefield. But in a new game run, it's really not that big of a problem, especially if you are using Black Panther with that optimal ISO loadout, because he can make really quick work of Claw there in both phases of the fight. After Claw, you'll need to interact with Winter Soldier, skip through his dialogue, skip through this cutscene. You'll then have a loading screen that really kind of freaks me out because you don't have any music that's playing in the background. And so I am always very concerned that this is a point where the game is going to freeze, and I've had that loading screen get stuck for a while. There's only one other place where that happens, and it is later on in this run, which is the last thing that you want to see in this type of a run. Granted, if you do see that it's a problem, myself or one of the other moderators can adjust the time in a run if you do need to reset to a save point, but it's still not ideal if you do run into a case where things have kind of frozen up. And even now, I'm not in the middle of a run, but my heart's kind of panicking a little bit where I'm not hearing that music pick back up. So it's really kind of unnerving to have this sitting here. And if you've watched any of my speedruns VODs in the past, you know that I typically talk about that point in the run later on when it does show up. You'll want to make your way through this door into the throne room. And then if you're in the New Game Plus run, again, you can use the Soul Siphon to bring all of those opponents into one centralized location, and then spin around and set up an identical Soul Siphon down here against these opponents and make quick progress and quick work of them there as well. From here, you'll want to get Nightcrawler back out and bring him down to the center of this ring. And it doesn't really matter because you will be teleported backwards off of that ring as the elevator comes up. but you'll want to be closer to it, just to kind of make sure that you can make your way down towards the catacombs of the of this portion of the world. Nightcrawler is really, really good in this section because it's a long stretch of optional combat. So you can just make your way through this entire section relatively quickly and skirt around a lot of the opponents that can be a little more problematic. Now, the safer route is definitely there to the right, but if you know what you're doing, like I do, you can take a path over here to the left, down around where all of the opponents are. You can then trigger the different terminals and make your way deeper into the necropolis here. Now, what I really like to do here is I like to interact with this terminal so I can get up here, and then I will grab this rocket, and typically I get it set up where I can hit this power terminal and disable the bridge. Because, again, this is all optional combat. Now, you can do it a little bit safer if you do take out those opponents, but they are not required. And then you can make your way down here to the end, interact with that terminal, skip this cutscene, and then go into a fight with MODOK. Again, in a New Game or New Game Plus run, you should, or New Game Plus more specifically, you will have, ideally, Black Panther on your team, and you can make very quick work of MODOK in this fight. When you get to phase 2 of the fight, there is a skippable cutscene that you'll need to interact with, and then make your way through the remainder of this fight. He can be particularly problematic with that corkscrew attack that shoots him across the battle arena in a New Game run, so you'll want to be mindful of that as you go into those combat sections. We're just about through this portion of the game. You'll need to interact with Thane and skip his dialogue again. There's then going to be another cutscene that you can skip through, and then you should already have Nightcrawler equipped for this. It's a very quick cut sequence where you're chased down the hallway by the entirety of the Black Order, and by the time we make our way down here to the back, we'll be in a much safer position. Actually, I'm just noticing that Ebony Maw is in that cutscene, but he's not a member of the party that's chasing you down the hallway, which I find really funny, actually. Once you're to the end of that hallway chase scene, you can skip this cutscene. You'll then have another cutscene that you can skip, and that is going to take you into the Hell and Asgard part of the run, which is the second to last area, and the area that we will talk about next week. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure that you leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe for that daily variety content, and I hope that you have an absolutely fantastic rest of your day.